You're listening to Leadership Powered by Common Sense with your host, Doug Thorpe. Here's Doug.
Well, greetings, everyone. This is another episode of Leadership Powered by Common Sense. I'm your host, Doug Thorpe, and today my guest, his name is Scott DeLong. We're going to have an interesting discussion about leadership, and I reached out to Scott because he is releasing a new book, and I just absolutely love the title of it. It's simply, I Thought I Was a Leader. And boy, if that doesn't sum up discussions that I get to have with a lot of clients and people around the globe and in business, it's a great theme and something that I guess you have to have high emotional intelligence to be willing to ask that question. But we'll get into that in more detail. Scott, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Doug. I appreciate you having me on.
I am very intrigued, and I want to dive right in and start. Why that title, and where did all that come from?
Wow. Well, great. I did. I grew up in leadership positions, whether it was in the sports field or in my initial businesses, always thinking that I'm in charge. I was always the captain of my baseball team. I played baseball at a very high level, and I was always chosen as a captain. And if it wasn't chosen, it became a de facto captain because just the leadership things that I thought that I was doing. And it wasn't until I turned around 50 where I hit a realization that what I was doing was more managing rather than leading, directing rather than leading. And it came from a couple things. It really came to me as a point where I was not getting exactly what I want. My businesses were successful. The things that I wanted to do, I was always able to do. All that worked out pretty good. The problem was that I wasn't developing the kind of relationships that I was looking for, whether from the folks that were working with me, for me, vendors, customers, all of that. I really believe in developing relationships, and I wasn't getting that. I was getting relationships with when I could do something for somebody. People would want to be around me. When I was no longer able to do those things, or they didn't need those things, they weren't hanging out. They weren't around. And so I started looking at that. I went back to school. I ended up getting a doctorate in leadership studies. Had to get a master's degree first in the same category, and then the doctorate. But that was only part of the journey. I'd also been a part of a group called Entrepreneur Organization. An entrepreneur organization is a really cool concept where you get a group of people in a room and you talk about, feelings, business people, mostly men close to my age talking about feelings, something we didn't grow up with, right? But I learned a lot from that. Right. And unfortunately, we also had another situation, and it took this trifecta for this to hit me well enough, but we had a son who was struggling with addiction issues, and my wife and I were going to Al-Anon and Ar-Anon meetings, and I saw this format of small groups sharing deeply. And three words came up to me with this trifecta of the educational portion, entrepreneur organization, and the Al-Anon Ar-Anon concept. Three words just kept circling in my mind that have made the principal section of my life and the changes that I've been attempting to make and working towards very hard that I didn't grow up with. And they were humility, empathy, and vulnerability. Not typically three words that you would associate with leadership. Typical command and control leaders, where you have George Patton or some of the old Henry Ford kind of folks, where they would just be leaders out of sheer force and demand. These are more drawing people towards you. And what I found in the last 13 years of this journey that I've been on is that those are the three most important characteristics in my leadership that have not only allowed me to become a better leader, and by better leader, I mean leading rather than having to manage. The more I lead, the less I have to manage to get the things done. And they've also developed stronger and deeper relationships with people, both at work and in my personal life.
Yeah.
It works in both places.
Say those three again.
Humility, empathy, vulnerability.
Love it. Love
Now,
it.
granted, I'm still working hard on all three, but I have to work even harder on the humility piece. That is not the one that I grasp as fast. And I'm working on it, right? It's trying to work between this self-promotion to sell a book and sell a business and all that at the same time being this humble servant type leader. That's what I'm still navigating and working on. But it is on my agenda. It is on my radar.
That is a definite conundrum. Being that force that can go sell a product or sell a concept or, sell a business, and yet have that level of humility when it comes to, building those relationships you're talking about and that meaningful. Wow, there's a lot packed into that. And I guess let me start on one particular thing that you said.
Sure.
A lot of business leadership has a legacy in command and control. And I happen to have just written an article recently in my blog where I was advocating that we need to abolish command and control.
Absolutely.
And I did in my writing, I did make the one exception. I said there are moments when you want command and control. And I use the example, if I have to ever have heart surgery, I want my heart surgeon to be in absolute command and control of that operating room.
So I believe that as well. So when you said abolish, I was going to challenge that a little bit because you can't necessarily abolish it. On my example that I use is if the building is burning down, I'm not going to form a committee.
Yeah.
We're going to make some decisions. Doug, you dial 911. Sally, you take the team and walk out that door over there. I'm going to be working on CPR on this. Right? The command and control is necessary in two places, in an emergency and sometimes when time is of the essence.
Yeah.
Because this style of leadership that I'm talking about takes time.
Yeah.
It takes time to build collaboration, commitment, teamwork. It takes more time than for just me to say, let's do this and go forward.
So what have you been able to do so far? You've had this revelation. You say you've been on this journey for 13 years.
Yep.
What have you been able to do to sort of, I'll use the word evangelize this idea of what leadership really ought to involve?
Well, I do it in my work. So I have a company called Lead Goals. And what we do is leadership training, communication training. And what I found is that, let me take a step back. My intention of building that company is to get people that look like me, 60-year-old business leader, white business leaders, right, to see things differently. That was my original intention. Wait, this revelation hit me. Others are going to want to see this as well. What I've come to find out is that many of these leaders are hiring me to fix their people. And so I have a lot more clients in the vice president offices now than I do the C-level. Well, the C-level people need this concept and this work. They're getting their vice presidents, and I'm fine with that because these are the people that are going to be the next generation that are aspiring to be the C-level. So I've been able to gather a following of folks that just believe. In fact, some of my clients tell me in reverse, before they go make decisions, they run it by this fictitious board of directors that they have in their mind, and they ask themselves, what would Scott say? And it's so cool when they tell me that. It's like, great, because what I would say is include. That's
right.
What I would say. Let's include people.
Yeah.
Wherever we can. And so I've been getting a lot of evangelizing has been easy to come by because a lot of my clients are in their 40s. They're not in their 60s. I'm still working on those that are in the 60s because they're the barriers and they're the blocks, right? And I still want us, the people, that grew up the way I did. It's been very successful, certainly, right? They've gotten to that C-level. They've been able to do these things, but I can almost guarantee there's something missing in their life. Maybe their business is doing okay, but maybe it's high turnover because they're not getting the commitment that they're looking for. Or maybe it's divorces, or maybe it's their kids being estranged, or whatever those things are. What I'm suggesting is this style of leadership rounds a human being out. You can still be successful. I work more on effectiveness than I do efficiency. And business is always run on efficiency. But I'm getting people to convert that into effectiveness. Effectiveness can be efficient, certainly, but what it means is part of the rest of our task of being a leader is to build future leaders and to show the path for those folks is much more effective because, my 6 vice presidents can do so much more than I can just do by myself. Why not empower them to empower others below them and continue that pathway and get more and more and more done? It becomes effective.
Yeah. You touched on in the early comments the idea of being an effective, productive manager and thinking you were a leader doing it. And I think there are many that do that. And I often will start a client engagement with asking them the question. Well, I used to ask the question, do you think there's a difference between management and leadership?
Yeah.
And what I learned real quick is for whatever enlightenment has happened in the last 5 to 10 years, everybody unilaterally agrees, yes, there is a difference.
Yeah, it's good.
Used to, they weren't sure, but now they are. Now they believe there's a difference. So the real question becomes, what is the difference? And, what do you understand or think about that difference? And I make the point, I've certainly known people that have been managers their whole life. So they achieved goals, they produced the numbers, companies were, quote, successful. But to your point, when you really lift the cover, lift the hood and look under the hood, you realize there's high turnover. The general morale is not what it could be. People feel stressed. They feel on the brink of burnout, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that's the byproduct of just keeping the pedal to the metal as a manager and not ever venturing into the leadership realm.
So I think a few things about that. When you were talking about, they're efficient and the people, the problem with that model is that people are coming to work then for their paycheck.
Right.
Nothing wrong with getting paid properly for your work. No question about that. We have to do that. People need to make a living. But I think the best employees are the ones that are on Sunday night looking forward to getting to work on Monday because that's where their tribe is. Whether it's remote or in person, doesn't matter. That's where my tribe is. So these are my people. These are the things that we do this together. Now, and they also look forward to Friday afternoon when it's quitting time and they get a weekend off that they get to go do their things. To me, those are the employees that I'm looking for right now, not only from them, but I need to create that space so that they can feel that. It's part of my job. So one of the differences that I see between management and leadership, and I have a whole list in the book we talk about, but one that I'd really like to get people to start thinking about is the difference between motivation, which is old school style. Hey, I will pay you this if you do that, or I'll quit beating you with this stick if you stop doing that, right? So the carrots and sticks concept, motivation as opposed to inspiration. Creating an intrinsic want and desire to do the thing. And it's, while I cannot create that intrinsic within somebody else, I can certainly provide the space for it and be the inspiration for that. And I think that's my job.
Well, and I think if as a leader you've created that space and have that dynamic going on, what I believe happens is for all of us walking the globe, showing up for work, we have at least 2 gears we operate in. We operate in a primary gear that allows us to perform at the job minimum. Whatever the job requires, basically, there's a hum and a motor for getting that done. But we have a second gear is where this discretionary effort kicks in, this 110%, the 120% effort. And when you've created a space that you're describing as a leader, people are more willing to bring and tap into that discretionary effort. And it shows up with things like Hey, boss, I just learned that Sally's got a problem. She needs to go take care of her kid. I can cover for her. You don't even have to make a decision. Just let her go. I'll got you. I got her back. We'll get this done. And that's a discretionary action on that employee's part to be able to do that.
It is. It's their choice, but I can help inspire that. I mean, and I think with one simple question, that when I'm laying out jobs and job descriptions and tasks that people need to do, and which, you still have to do that. You can't just be this mythical leader and everything happens. There still has to be a plan and action. But I think there's one question that I can always ask or should always be able to ask that helps them get to that space as well. And that is this: how can I help?
Mm-hmm.
How can I help? What that does for people? The answer is almost always, no, I got this. Don't worry about it. I got it. I'll let you know when I need your help. But the offer is accepted into their heart, their soul. It really is.
Yeah.
I've seen my willingness. My willingness is appreciated at that point. And I think whether I'm the CEO and then there's a vice president that asks their director, how can I help? And the director asking their manager, here's what we need to do. How can I help? What do you need? Right? So that those become very important. They're not tricks, but they are tools. And it's a sincere offer. I'm not going to ask you, how can I help? You give me something and say, nah, I can't do that. I got to be willing to back it up.
Right.
You got to be willing to back it up.
Right.
So,
right.
So,
no, I agree. I think that's a big part of it is that, I like your words, that sincere offer to be that guy that can help. And, some argue that's one of the attributes of leadership, that you clear the roadblocks that your people are going to run into.
Very, very few other attributes you need. Clear the roadblocks and provide the tools.
Right.
Sometimes those tools are hard skills. You may need this computer program or whatever, but a lot of times they're the soft skills are tools that I can be providing. This concept of communication, leadership, building trust, helping develop teams. Those are all soft skills.
Yeah.
And those are the mark of leaders versus managers. Managers use the tools, the hard tools. Here's this tool, here's this time, here's this money, here's this kind of thing. Whereas the leader is going to work more on the soft skills.
Let's talk about that idea of building trust. A lot has been written lately. A colleague and I even released our own book last year about the whole idea of how to build trust in a team. Mm-hmm. And for us, we had been using this program for decades and just felt that it was necessary to bring it forward and freshen it up a little bit. And it's a 6-part model, and we can go into that another time. But what ended up happening, as we were developing the book, Google released their infamous Project Aristotle, where they studied the difference in high-performing teams, and they popularized the phrase psychological safety is the space.
Yep.
And you're talking about creating a space, and in Google's terms, it's the space where psychological safety exists, and that means I can show up, I can speak my piece. I'm not going to get embarrassed or ridiculed or challenged. I might get challenged in that we'll have an open discussion, but I'm not going to get condemned for what I'm thinking.
Yeah. So Amy Edmondson from Harvard writes a lot about psychological safety. And then there's somebody, a guy named Dr. Timothy Clark, that wrote the 4 stages of psychological safety that I like to follow. And in his model, the 4 stages are inclusion, making sure that we welcome people into the group, learning safety. There are no dumb questions. The question is asked because they need an answer to it, right? The next one is contribution, that I can be able to provide my thoughts to this discussion. And the other end is challenge, being the challenger. I don't see it that way. What about this, right? Saying, I'm not sure, boss, that you're right. And psychological safety, broken down to very simple terms, is that people can then speak their mind without fear of ridicule.
Right.
The leader needs to create the space, but anybody on a team can ruin the psychological safety. I'll give you an example. if there were 6 of us sitting here talking right now, and one person over to my left was rolling their eye, you might be the boss, right? And you're nodding in agreement with what I'm saying, but someone over here is rolling their eyes like, oh, there he goes again, right? That's going to break the safety down on this team. And I may not be as open in the future as I was right now, because that person over there stopped the safety from being transpired throughout this entire team or entire organization. So while the leader needs to create it, anyone on the team can ruin it.
I've told this story before. I was doing a team engagement at one of the large oil companies, and we had done a team assessment survey of how the team was operating and so forth. And when we got the results, it was a classic four blocker. And there were a lot of dots in the upper right-hand quadrant, which suggested high performing, high trust, the whole thing. But there was one dot way off to the side. And we got to the team meeting and opened up that book. And one guy over in the corner, as you said, raised his hand and said, let's don't spend any time dwelling on this. I'm this dot over here in the corner. I know I am. I'm gonna own it. I'm gonna claim it. And it's just the way I feel about this team. And a couple of the other team members immediately chimed in and said, why do you think you feel that way? And he said, I realize I'm always the contrarian. Whatever you guys throw up, I've always got an opposite, usually 180-degree opposite opinion, and I voice it, and I see a lot of eye rolling, I see a lot of frustration, I see a lot of body language that's not good. And he said, truthfully, it's interesting, we're doing this exercise right now, I'm thinking about asking for a transfer. I just don't think I fit here anymore. And to the man and lady, the team said, no, please do not do that. We love your challenge.
Yeah.
This makes us a better team. The fact that you are willing to be that voice, and you might feel like the lone wolf, but if we've never said we appreciate you, now's the moment. We will do a much better job of letting you know how much we value what you do. And please do not transfer.
So when building a team, go back into the sports analogy, right? So I was a baseball player, and so you normally start up the middle. You have a catcher and your shortstop and your center fielder being your best athletes. Let's just say that, right? It may not always be true, but you don't want 9 shortstops, and you certainly don't want 9 catchers, and you certainly don't want 9 center fielders. You need people with complementary skills, and even those that are able to challenge those skills. Like you're not going to ask your catcher to steal many bases, right? Nor does he need to. So, or you don't need 11 quarterbacks on a team. In fact, if you had 11 quarterbacks, you wouldn't have a very good team.
Right.
Who's going to block?
Yeah, everybody has a role. Who's going to go
catch the ball? Who's going to be doing whatever they need to? So building your team, but there are some things that you do need in your team. You need people that are curious, and you need people that are willing. I love the curious folks and the challenging curious folks. Want to know more.
Yeah.
Right? And when you have a contrary point of view than mine, I want to know more about yours. Why? There's a couple reasons. The first one is that whether I agree with your view or not, your information is going to make me smarter. I will have more information now. But the second, if I actually spend the time to listen to your point of view, it starts from being in this hostile position. No, I don't think so. But when I start listening to you, your shoulders drop a little bit. You become a little more open. I provide you with grace. In most cases, you'll provide me with that same grace when I have an opposite point of view as well. And that's how to build a team. So communication is a big piece of this, and it's often overlooked. And learning how to disagree without being disagreeable, or say what you mean without being mean, right, are important parts of helping build this team. I don't want everyone just agreeing with me. If they all did, I wouldn't need them. We can if we only have my idea, we're only as smart as I can be. And we are smarter than me.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. I like that a lot.
Thanks.
I tell you what, Scott, on that note, we're going to take a short commercial break. And folks, when we come back, and please hang with us, we've got a lot more to cover on this idea of, gee, I thought I was a leader. We'll be right back.
Business is all about solving complex problems as fast as you can create them. Become the best problem solver by leading others to greatness too. And the first step is going to DougThorpe.com. Doug Thorpe is known globally for coaching entrepreneurs and business leaders, improving their performance and the work output of everyone surrounding them. You can find health, wealth, and happiness by learning to lead others to health, wealth, and happiness. Go to DougThorpe.com now and order Doug's books or hire him to coach your managers. That's DougThorpe.com.
All right, everyone, we're back. This is Leadership Powered by Common Sense. I'm Doug Thorpe, and my guest today is Scott DeLong. We're talking about his new book, and as I've said now, I guess now it'll be the third time. I love the title. I Thought I Was a Leader, and boy, if that's not probing and thought-provoking. One thing before we get into more detail on some of your elements, I do want to ask one question. This comes up for me, especially when I'm dealing with leaders in larger organizations. Inevitably, somebody's going to ask the question, how do I manage up? And I've got some thoughts on that, but I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to ask you just that raw question. What would you say to somebody who's asking the question, how do I manage up?
Yeah, I think it's important to learn how to do that. In fact, that's when I'm coaching these vice presidents wanting to be C-levels. One of the things that is going to get you into that C-level position is your ability to manage up, and people's recognition that you do a good job of that. So I think it's important for you to be able to speak your truth. Now, not every organization allows that. And that's where we get back into the psychological safety. If psychological safety does not exist, you're going to get less truth from me than otherwise. So the leader's job is to provide that. However, if they don't, I still have the responsibility as someone a little lower on the totem pole to be able to bring my ideas to light. And managing up is no different than speaking to a large group. You need to know your audience. What is it that's going to resonate with Doug? How can I approach Doug in a way that is non-threatening? Because if you feel threatened, the first thing that you do is puff up your chest, come forward and provide this big barrier that I'm not going to be able to get through. So I know I can't do that. So I need to know my audience. What's important to Doug? Is it an analytical approach? Is it a psychological approach? Is it an emotional approach? So understanding the audience first. Then presenting myself in such a way that I am not threatening and that I'm speaking your language. Emotional, psychological, logical, whatever the situation is, depending on who I'm talking to. I need to be able to speak your language. I'm not talking about English versus Spanish, but you can use that as an example, right?
Yeah.
So if I'm not speaking, if I go to a foreign country, and let's say Germany, because I don't speak German, and I try to explain what I want to eat to a waiter, and I just use the English words, but then say them louder and then louder and then louder, which most of us do, right? I still don't get what I want to eat. So I need to figure out what is it that I want, and is the next thing I'm going to do going to put me in a position to get that thing? And I can't do that unless I know what language you speak.
Yeah. Typically, when I'm asked that question about managing up, I have unilaterally challenged my clients to rethink their expectation. And I do that by telling them I want to challenge the concept, and I'm getting literal, but can you really manage your boss? And I would argue no. In the strictest sense of the word, you're never going to manage your boss. However, can you influence? Can you persuade? Can you, guide discussions? Can you inform and inspire your boss? Yes, you can. And I like your idea of the approach on how to do that. First thing is to connect on whatever level they operate on. If they're analytical or if they're logical or just simply theoretical, You've got to try to connect on that wavelength, bring your message that way, and then you can open up the doors for more discussion.
Yeah, I just call it speak their language.
Yeah.
What's the language that they're going to understand?
Yeah. There's actually a study that was done, and I'm drawing a blank right now on the source. It's several years old, but the title of it is Speaking Truth to Power. Mm-hmm. And it ultimately presents 6 different ways that someone who is struggling with the person of authority above them and ways you can change the discussion, influence the matter that's in front of you.
Well, there's another thing that I give to some clients, knowing who their bosses are and how they operate, and knowing that they are the smartest guy in the room, let's say, right, that wants to make the whole command and control decisions. There are times, and this may sound a little subversive, and you got to make sure that you're not being subversive, but there are times to build a coalition before you make the presentation to the boss as well.
Yeah. That's one of the 6 in this report.
Yeah, that you need to, like, go talk to the other VPs or the other directors, or whoever else is in the room. If this person is not going to hear you because they've got all the power and they don't know how to use it appropriately, right? Hearing something in stereo always sounds better than hearing it out of one speaker.
Right.
Right. Assuming the message is good. Assuming the music is good, I'd rather hear it in stereo. That's the way to attract the boss as well. 2 or 3, 1, 2 or 3 others, like-minded people, knowing that you've got some support and some backup. One, it provides me a little confidence to be able to speak up in this meeting, that knowing that someone's got my back. But the other is, maybe my idea is not the best, and these people might be able to help me craft that a little bit differently to get to this person over here.
Yeah.
So I like using the teamwork approach as well. As long as it's not subversive, like we're talking behind someone's back and we're trying to plot against. And the goal is not get what I want that's best for me, to get what we need that's best for us when you're dealing with a team.
Right. That reminds me of that same team scenario I was alluding to earlier. At one point in that meeting, the team leader made the comment to his group. He said, "Hey guys, remember back in the day, we used to listen to decisions and directives that were coming from above, and we always talked about those guys, and they did this and they did that." He said, "Guess what? We are them."
Us and them, right?
We are now them. So what can we do to not be those guys?
So part of that is, there's two questions in there that I heard. The first one is how to break down the us versus them. The credit department as antagonistic to the sales department, right? That we are a organization, a singular organization, and how do we break those barriers? And my suggestion, in fact, the studies that I've done, and my doctoral dissertation was based on this, of building trust between interdepartmental groups. And the best way to take the antagonism out of that relationship is to listen to them. Find out what is important to them. Not debate. I used to go through this concept that said, okay, hey, we're always able to discuss, debate, and sometimes we can even argue. We should never fight. I totally disagree with that now. I don't think it needs to be a debate. I think the debate becomes counterproductive. You have your idea, I have mine. I'm not going to talk you into mine by stepping over yours and escalating the conversation. How I can get you to change your thoughts, or maybe you change mine, I'm not sure what's best for us yet, is to enter into dialogue. Dialogue is a discussion between us. And for me to actually really hear you. Not just listen, but hear you. And understand as much as I can from your point of view what matters to you. Your shoulders will drop. You'll be more at ease. We will be able to get into dialogue that way. And it is incumbent upon me to be the first one to do that. I know so many people that want to go into a contract and start putting their points out, right? They're making their points and being first to say and getting the foothold in there. And I say just the opposite. If you want to win, let them speak.
Yeah.
And really listen to them. You will not only gain more information, some of that information, if you want to be antagonistic, you use against them in some way, you can outflank them. Some of that information may inform your ideas so that you can be a little smarter and you can present what's better for us. And some of them may end up being, I hadn't thought of it that way. You're right. Let's do that. But can we add this to it? Right. And then we get into that discussion and we end up having a better deal. I'm not a big fan of compromise. Congress has to. That's what they do because they're not going to collaborate.
Yeah, they're not good at it. But
they're not good at it. Right. But that's the only chance they get is to get into the other side, as opposed to seeing what the other side has to offer to make our idea better.
Yeah. And as you were describing all that. It's not a huge difference,
but it's a difference.
Yeah. As you were describing all that, that's the thought that was going through my mind. Boy, the world has just lost the ability to do that.
Yeah.
And when an issue arises, people are quick to run to their circle or their camp, wherever they are. And I'm reminded, it's been several years now, but it was during one of the election cycles. I was part of a community group. We had two people come and do a little bit of a debate or discussion. And, one was Democrat, one was Republican. Mm-hmm. We were anxious about what this was going to turn into, but we were pleasantly surprised. These two guys were local operatives in each party, but and therefore they knew each other pretty well because they had been doing it for years. But what they presented publicly was an amazing demonstration of what you're talking about. The ability to be prompted by the other to answer a question about a position or a thought or an idea, and then counter that with whatever your particular bent on that was. But it was healthy. It was informative. Yeah. We all sat back, like you said, shoulders dropped, and everybody went, "This is not how our political system works."
So take that politics example into the family dining room at Thanksgiving. I know so many families that say, "Oh, we don't talk religion or politics at Thanksgiving." Why? Well, because it doesn't have to. And it doesn't have to if we have willing participants that are actually curious about what the other person thinks and why they think that. One of the ways that I use to engage in this dialogue is say, I don't see it like that. Help me understand. Like, that's an invitation to hearing them. Help me understand. Doesn't do me any harm to understand their point of view. In fact, it enhances my knowledge. Knowing another point of view. I didn't see it like that. We walk through the world with blinders on. We see what we see. We get this confirmation bias that we continue to see more of what we already believe and then believe there's more fact. I'm telling you, there is another set of facts out there. There's another interpretation of this set of facts out there. And if I want to really be this lifelong learner that I claim to be, I need to find out from you, my counterpart, the person that doesn't think like me, what else is there? What am I missing? Help me understand. Can you tell me more? Can you explain how that works? I don't see it like that. Here's what I see. And then if they get curious and back, then we have a fun conversation. Not you're wrong. They're not wrong. It's how they see the world.
Yeah.
Understand how they see the world gives you more strength, more ability to influence.
Yeah.
I avoided the word power there. It does give you more power, but I avoided the word because the power is an often misused tool.
Yeah, I agree totally. Well, and in modern thinking, in the so-called realm of emotional intelligence, it takes a person that has done some work in that space to be able to answer those or ask those questions without getting that emotionally charged response to something.
It's actually a chapter in my book is on emotional intelligence, and a lot's been written about it. And in fact, most of the people that I come across think they're pretty good at it. They're not.
No.
They're not.
No.
They may be good at pieces of it, right? So a lot of people are really good at, especially people that have done well in business or politics or whatever their career is. the part that they are good at is reading the room, seeing what you're thinking and all that. So that's part of it. And most people are okay at that. What they're not as good at is reading themselves.
Right.
Understanding what triggers they have and not controlling those, but managing those triggers. I use an example of, I ask people all the time, I said, well, do you know what you know what a pipe bomb is, right? It's this thing that explodes and everybody, all this destruction. Do you know the difference between a tea kettle and a pipe bomb? There's only one. It's a little vent at the top of the tea kettle that lets the steam out so it doesn't expand and explode.
Yeah.
Right. And so therefore, if I want to put a cap on you and your thoughts, you're going to end up exploding at some point, some way, right? As opposed to letting some of the steam out. Let's talk about it. Let's get into dialogue. Let's find out what matters to you. It does a lot for me to find out what matters to you. Like, let's say you work for me, right? And I pay you market rate, but the other guy over there is going to offer you, 7, 10% more. And the difference between he and I, or she and I, is that I care about you, your thoughts, things like that. You're not even going to look at that offer. That's why I talked about turnover at the beginning of this leadership approach and showing care and concern for the people that work with me. There's no reason for their resume to be on the street. Now,
right.
It doesn't mean that's from cradle to grave, kind of I may not have the opportunities that you need. But if I provided you the tools and you will get a better job, I need to pat you in the back and say congratulations too.
Right.
That's important as well.
Right.
But as long as I continue to have the opportunities that you need, and I'm this type of leader that I talk about, and that we're doing good work in the world, meaning the product that we have is something you believe in, your resume is not on the street. You're sticking around.
Yep.
Why would you go anywhere else? For a couple extra bucks? Probably not.
No, I agree. Well, Scott, this has been great, and we're unfortunately up on time here, but thank you so much. I mean, we probably need to do another episode here down the road, but a lot going on, and I really appreciate your insights. Tell folks how they can get a hold of you or the book and all your good information.
Well, the book's going to be mostly distributed on Amazon. I am going to be self-publishing. There's a lot of reasons for that, and I'd like to talk about that someday as well, in self-publishing versus going to the publishing world. But it's going to be available strictly on Amazon in 3 versions initially, and then we're going to be doing an audio version as well, probably about a month later. It's releasing in January 17th. The book is titled, I Thought I Was a Leader. Wait till you read the first line in the book. I finished that statement, right?
Yeah.
Probably not appropriate to say on your show right now, but read through that. But I Thought I Was a Leader. It's a journey, and it's really my journey and some of my clients' journeys on building trust, developing teams, and inspiring change.
Very good. Very good. I'll certainly look forward to it. And honestly, by the time we get this released, your book will already be available.
Okay.
We'll have that out. But what's the best way people can get a hold of you if they're interested in learning more?
Honestly, the best way is through my email. It's just Scott@lead2goals, LEAD, the number 2 goals, GOALS.com.
Okay.
And I am very responsive.
Okay.
You won't be sitting in my inbox.
Good.
I make sure I respond to people.
Well, we will definitely have all that information in the show notes, folks, if you didn't catch it on the fly there. But one last time, Scott, thanks so much for your sharing. It's really been good information.
Well, thanks, Doug. I appreciate the opportunity, and I enjoyed the conversation as well. So that was great.
Likewise. So, folks, we are going to wrap it up. I'd like to remind everybody, if you're listening to this show on your favorite streaming service, we do have an episode video over on YouTube, channel by the same name, Leadership Powered by Common Sense. Hop over there, take a look, leave us a like or a comment, thumbs up, thumbs down. I'm a big boy. I can take it either way, but leave us your feedback. And if you know someone or you yourself are interested in being a guest, go over to my website, and there's a link there to inquire about being a guest, and just let us know your interest. We look forward to talking with you. And for now, we're going to sign off, say goodbye. Have a great day.
You've been listening to Leadership Powered by Common Sense, hosted by Doug Thorpe. If you would like to know more about the coaching and advisory services he provides, visit dougthorpe.com.